sunshine. Oh, my garden looks a little dry. Let's engineer some rain, right? Let's scare my friends over wherever and just send a hurricane by, but not let it touch down. But the thing is, when it comes to our businesses, we have a bit more control when it comes to the engineering. And so today, I'm definitely excited to do that. I'm still waiting for the official go-ahead from our top engineer to make sure that we're live. So we're still in this transitional state. But I think one of the interesting elements of scaling is that something like engineering, you have, I think, more of an advantage for scaling, because engineering is all about creating systems that will scale. And so I think it's almost an engineering inception, to where I would believe that engineers have more control over the way that they can engineer. And I'm looking here. Yes, we are live. So our engineer has engineered us online. Welcome everybody to the podcast that basically takes you behind the scenes with people who are doing magical things, and magic being taking a startup from startup to scale up. This is a ScaleUp Heroes. You can find all these episodes and more on startupacademy.io. And today we've got an amazing panel from around the world to talk about how you can better engineer, or the mistakes that they've made during engineering in the scaling up process. So Pedro is back as an awesome moderator. He's an engineering director at Talkdesk. He's out of Porto today. Then we've got Andrew Mirsky, who's a VP of engineering at Smart Asset in New York City, and it's a little rainy there, but that's okay. And then we've got Eduardo, I'm gonna mess this up, Gulias Davis, CTO at Packlink, and he's out of Madrid. And then we've got Harsh Mittal, maybe mess that up, but that's okay. You know, I'm engineering my words right now. Head of engineering at Circles.Life out of Singapore. So we've got a great fully rounded thing. I'm gonna be taking notes, and I will have some sort of a creative recap that I'm gonna engineer along the way. Let's get to it, guys. Let's start putting our brains virtually onto the keyboards so that we can talk about what's working and what's not to help everybody else. Pedro, take it away, buddy.
Cool. Thank you so much for the introduction, Ryan. I never saw myself as a David Copperfield of engineering, so thank you for the compliment. We'll try to make some plain kind of evaporator. So, okay. So, hi everyone. Ryan did an amazing introduction. Today, the topic is horizontal versus vertical teams, and how the engineering teams can be formed, can scale, and how they can be as efficient as possible. So today we have three brilliant professionals from very different places around the globe. So we have Eduardo, we have Andrew, and Harsh. So I think that the first question that everybody would like to understand a little bit more is, so what's your responsibility inside your company, right? So we have different roles. Yes, we have a CTO, a VP of engineering, a head of engineering. So definitely people that are in charge, on a healthy way, obviously, of the engineering of your company. So tell me a little bit more about your responsibilities. Maybe we can start by Andrew. So if
sure. So my role has actually grown recently as the company scales, both making sure that our web applications and systems get out the door on a release basis, as well as make sure the technology of the company as a whole functions properly. Everything from making sure that I have a recording set up so I can do interviews, to making sure we have phone systems and laptops for both the engineering side and the business side of the company.
Very well. What about you, Harsh?
So I think it's quite similar, I would say, but I think for me it's a larger team, and my journey has been about scaling in last year team from about 10 engineers to 65, where we are right now, and we are looking at getting to close to 100 by end of the year. So it's all about hiring, setting up the processes, setting up the next generation architecture, building processes, how to scale engineering, as well as the interaction between product and engineering, and the topics of functional and vertical teams and all that.
Very well. So from what you said, I imagine that you spend at least half of your day interviewing people, right?
Yeah.
Very well. Last but not least, so Eduardo, what are you responsible for in your company?
Well, pretty much like Harsh in a way. We are growing. The engineering team is growing from around 10 or 12 people. We hope to reach around the 30s. which is maybe not as much as 100, but still it's 3 times our base value. And so, yes, processes, hiring processes, hiring people, culture match, forming teams, how to organize a team, involving products and building the product culture within the company. So on the same challenges that here Andrew and Harsh are facing.
Very well. So we understood more or less the size of the engineering team that Harsh is in charge. We also had a flavor for Eduardo's team. I think the only one that's left is that you, Andrew. So how big is Smart Assets? Just to make sure that the people that are listening to us can actually relate more or less with your situation.
So the engineering team is 18 people right now, split across front end, back end, QA, and our development operations team. The goal is to get to over 20 by the end of 2018 and just about 40 or 45 by the end of 2019.
Very well, very well. So this is a great introduction for my next question. So we were talking about now skill sets, so I've heard backend, I heard front end, QA, and definitely we need several more in order for us to ship an amazing product to our customers. So one thing that I really would like to understand is exactly, so how are your teams formed? Because yes, you might have 18 engineers or 50 engineers or 30, but there is very ways to form and group the engineers in order to have a very efficient delivery, right? So I think that probably we can start with Eduardo, for instance. So how are your teams formed? How do you see, how many teams do you have? How are they kind of distributed across your architecture or not? So
yes, well, right now we are in the middle of forming everything. So the team is composed of around 18 people without including product people. If we include them, it's 19 for now. And the way we organize the team is by kind of a revenue stream or product line. And so we are having teams focused on our products, and we have teams focused on internal company scale. In our case, we rely heavily on operations, as we are in the logistics ecosystem. So we really need a big part of customer service and sales, and so we need to give them support also. And part of the company scale goes through being efficient in that area. And then we are building teams for, call it platform in a way. We need to, in order to provide new business models and new revenue streams, we need to work a lot of things and build new building blocks, so to speak, for the rest of engineering. So basically, in terms of skills or skill sets, product teams are aimed to be really, really cross-functional, front-end, back-end, products, design, QA, whereas company scale teams are more back-end focused, for example, because they will be probably working with standard applications for each area. So for example, in customer service, we use Zendesk. So then we will provide an API for Zendesk, so we can put some bots and chatbots and tools for our agents. The same goes for our CRM, our ERP, and so on. So there are not so many internal tools, or we want to constrain the amount of internal tools. And then when making building blocks on top of which we want to release new products, then again, it's more backend focus with, yes, an exception where we want to improve our front-end technology. So it's a mix between backend and front-end. So that's pretty much kind of an overview of what we are aiming for.
So tell me one thing. One thing that I've just realized that so we kind of introduced ourselves, and you're kind of discussing how you dispose your team in terms of engineering. But one thing that probably everyone that's listening to us will be very helpful is to understand a little bit better what Packlink does. So what's the problem that you guys at Packlink are trying to solve, and what makes you unique? So I think that you can answer that, and then we go to Andrew and Arsh and ask these two questions. So if you don't mind.
Yes, perfect, sure. Okay, so Packlink is shipping platform for e-commerces mostly. However, the company was born as a shipping prices comparison for B2C. So we have these two business lines, B2B and B2C, and we have presence in 4 countries in Europe. France, Spain, Italy, and Germany, and looking to expansion. So we are in the middle of the logistics for e-commerces, basically.
Okay, very well. Thank you for that. So Harsh, can you explain for us a little bit what Circles.Life does? What's unique about your company, and then you can tell us how are your teams formed, please?
Sure. So Circles.Life is a startup in a telco area. So we are Singapore. We are based out of Singapore, and we are operating in Singapore as a telco. We are 100% digital telco, and one of the first in the world to do that. So what is that? That means it's more like Uber of telco. So we don't own any telco assets. But what we own is a completely homegrown tech platform, which essentially is a telco in cloud. So we have built technology where we can connect and utilize a partner's network, and but provide the end-to-end telco services along with good plans and customization and personalization to end customers. Right now, we are the fastest growing telco in Singapore. And I think what makes us sort of unique is that in telco, the engineering is very different, because telco is a mission critical service, and you can't afford to let it down. Right. So we are back to where we measure the availability in 6 nines, and we are very careful about the security and latency, while talking about the speed and agility of our startup. So that's a unique combination, I would say. Yeah, and we're going very fast, so that it's another dimension of chaos.
And what about the way that your teams are formed? So how do you have your engineering team lined up?
So I think as Eduardo was saying, it's sort of similar in a sense that so there are horizontal teams which are focused on so there are people so I like to put more flat organization. So I have around I would say around 10 team leads which are handling different areas, and there are multiple teams which own different tech stacks, right? So say, for example, there's a horizontal team which is looking at the telco management aspect, and these are the engineers who are looking at our telco management platform, which is written in Node.js. Then say there's another backend team which is looking at e-commerce aspect, because we are 100% digital. So we are like a small e-commerce company. We sell the phones, we sell the SIM card, we take the payment, we ship them to your home. So then there's a mobile team, there's a DevOps team, there's a QA team, there's automation QA. All those teams are there. But when it comes to delivering and user-facing features, then we need to form what we call it shuttle teams, but it's more like similar to vertical teams, which basically cut across these boundaries and involve more people. So like, they have people from, so they definitely have a product manager. They have someone from the design team. More often than not, they also have someone from the data analytics, right? So, and sometimes like, someone from the network engineering. So a lot of cross-functional people come together, and these teams, though we have sort of semi-fixed structure, so core people remain the same, but based on the need of the features, we add or rotate people from these teams. While horizontal teams are more or less constant. And we do one more thing is that when we look at running our sprints, we dedicate 30% of our bandwidth just focusing on the engineering related stuff. So there's a lot of things which engineering leads drive related to the, scale, re-architecture, building a new platform and so on. And some of the teams are just, horizontal. They don't have any vertical component to it.
I see. Thank you, Andrew. So what's the smart asset? What's unique about you, and how are your engineering team in terms of tactics?
Sure. So we looked out at the personal finance market and really saw that it was fairly fragmented and decentralized, especially when it came to giving people education about what personal finance product that is most appropriate for them. Even sometimes just flat out inaccurate information. So we wanted to really aggregate quite a bit of information to educate users on personal finance products, and then match them with the right personal finance products, the right bank, the right savings account, the right checking account for them. So both sort of make informed decisions as well as help the financial industry find the right customers. I've worked in a lot of organizations over the years, some horizontal, some vertical, some matrixed, and we're trying something a little different here. We're doing it we're organizing based on what I'm calling disciplines, but it's really sort of the different types of user stories or product feature sets that we're developing. For example, we do a lot of content and content delivery, and that requires a different set of user experiences and user goals than, let's say, all of our interactive features. We have a bunch of calculators that help people determine, what the right finance decision for retirement is, and that requires a different sort of mindset about how you implement your technology and features. They're all cross-functional. They all include front, back-end QA product, but they're much more focused on sort of the kind of interaction that the consumer is having with our site.
I see. So I see that on these three cases, we have very different approaches. So between kind of full stack or vertical team, some horizontal team. For instance, here at Talkdesk, we started completely as a horizontal team. So we had just like a front-end team, a back-end team, an EQA team, and a product team. We are now kind of moving much towards the kind of a full stack team where you can actually almost have like a unit of someone from product, UX, development on back end, front end, and QA. So we don't have QA separate anymore. So it's built in on the team so that teams can actually ship something directly to production. And then the last thing that we did actually was inserting a flavor of a wheel team, which is pretty much every time we had like a big problem that we want to solve as an engineering team, we kind of gather 2 or 3 folks that are kind of mandated to just go there, fix the issue regardless of being on their teams or not. And then they just go back to their teams, and then we just kind of group another set of people to solve another problem, stuff that pretty much we wouldn't have regularly time to solve. And then on this case, we kind of make sure that the ball doesn't get dropped. So this actually kind of makes me wonder. So we've talked about a lot of ways to organize our engineering teams. So are your teams organized around your architecture, saying in the terms of, so do you have like a back end and a front end team? Every time there is a new service that is born, do you have another team to do that or not? You know, there is a lot of talk that we talk about the Conway's law, you know, that an organization that has a given structure will always create an architecture of that sort of structure. So what is your concerns around that? And do you tend to watch out for that, or you just kind of just do your own thing? So I think that we can start with Harsh, for instance.
Yes, so I think that's a very good question. And what we do is we rotate engineers quite a bit across our teams. And sort of I was saying some of these cross-functional teams, they sort of keep moving. And also, even in the backend teams, we have this concept of like, you know, see, we have legacy software, like, you know, the things which, you know, help us run the business day to day. And there are a lot of new things which we are building every day. New microservices are coming, you know, pretty much every sprint. So what we try to do is mix and match the ownership of legacy code and the new microservices, so that all the engineers are basically still excited working on both platforms, and they're learning coming from the legacy to the new services. I don't think there's a perfect answer to this, but we try to avoid showing the team boundaries in the architecture by, you know, constantly shifting the, you know, ownership of the components across the teams. So hopefully that will keep it balanced and keep us agile.
Yes, that's definitely a challenge. I agree, Ash. What about you, Eduardo?
Well, Packlink is 6 years old. We have also our legacy system that brought the company to where we are today. Basically, we have a second legacy. The second legacy is the one that is still alive. We managed to give proper sepulture to the first one. But anyway, we were on the first stages having more kind of call it horizontal teams. It didn't really work. So we went through a period where we were kind of these shuttle teams that Harsh was commenting. We call them ephemeral teams. It's kind of the same. Basically, you have this feature coming. So we were in a Kanban, so it was kind of easier, right? So it was this feature coming, and then you assemble a team with the needed skill set, and you go for the feature. The problem there is sometimes it's hard to scale. That's that kind of way of working, and it's kind of messy, right? Maybe you end up waiting for people to join something because it's the one with the right skill sets, and you may not have this ownership feeling of what you are building. You feel more like a feature factory, and you don't want that. So that's why we are kind of returning into teams, but with a clear, as you said, as a unit. They are able to ship whatever they need. The difference with, for example, from Hash is that there is no ownership yet on the different services. We are also on microservices. But you own the complete feature. So if the feature requires, say, removing something from the legacy system and putting it into a new place, that's part of the feature. It's not something away from it. So basically, anyone at any time has the possibility to interact with the legacy system, at least to check if it's not something is needed. So I think it's more on it's also a lot of cultural input in how you organize your teams and this history the company has had, or your own experiences, and to how you organize a team, and then you kind of experiment, right? You see, okay, let's go this way. If it works, you continue doing it. If suddenly everything goes the other way around, so we quickly change. So yeah, in a way, we kind of managed to have Conway's law kind of at a distance. At the beginning, yes, we had this very same problem because we were divided by countries. So we almost had people in silos worrying only about their country, and we had to break that. And then the company started changing into a more global thing. So there is no more country-wise. So it's just Packlink, and then we help each other.
Good. That's the ultimate goal, definitely. And actually, it was funny that you've mentioned legacy code. And I love legacy code because if you have a legacy code, it means that you made it so far. And so that's a very good sign when we are in this startup world. Legacy is just something that you really need to love because it means a lot.
Yeah, legacy is not necessarily bad. Usually it tends to be the trade-offs of, okay, we need this quick and short-lived and short term, but we need to make the business rock. But then it stays there, for like forever. So yeah, it's good to have legacy.
Yeah, we try to kill it all the time, but it just loves us and won't let us go.
I just want to add a little thing. So when I said these shuttle teams, they're not literally tied to the features, but they are more tied to the goals. And for a goal, we do multiple features. So part of the core shuttle team stays the same. And then we add and remove people as and when, like in a sprint one, we are doing more features toward a goal, then we add more people to that team. But the core people which are tied to that goal pretty much remain the same. So otherwise, I totally see what the problem Eduardo was talking about. Like, if we form the shuttle team for every sprint and people change, then there'll be lack of ownership. So
yeah, true, exactly. Andrew, your turn.
So I have a slightly different perspective. I find Conway's law very similar to Moore's law in the sense that they're more self-fulfilling prophecies than they are actually laws. They're more adages, right? They're not actually laws. That's just based on empirical. And I think that if left unchecked, yes, your architecture is going to match your structure, mostly because communication, right? Communication between teams based on, defining APIs and dependencies amongst different projects. But when it comes down to it, different architectures are required to solve different problems. Sometimes microservices is the right architecture. Sometimes a more service-oriented but monolithic architecture is important for certain systems. So if left unchecked, yeah, it's gonna sort of move in that direction, but it's not required. I always also find interesting that people talk about legacy and they talk about legacy more as legacy is always this monolith, right? People always look at this as its monolith, mostly because then you can't change all of it. But that's very natural for legacy code to be sort of condensed into a single place. But I think it's more about letting each team solve the problem with the right tool set, whether sometimes it's microservices, sometimes it's monolithic, sometimes it's a relational database, sometimes it's a non-relational database. There are people who fit into this camp of like, oh, it has to be, a scripting language. It has to be a statically typed language. And you can't let every different possibility into your environment because you can't keep track of it all and you can't train everybody. Yep. But you have to have at least some flexibility to allow both to operate as you're developing tools. For us, the monolith, quote unquote, is our website. We get all of our traffic, 120 million page loads and 5.5 million uniques a month, all through our website. And that needs to be a monolith because it's a single URL structure. But the backend systems tend to be more microservices. So I think it really fits. Find the right tool to solve the problem.
No, absolutely. And actually, we were talking about this diversity of technologies and kind of we really need to find the right balance between innovation and stability and predictability. So
yeah,
it's not easy.
I find it interesting. We interview a lot of people and they want to come work for a startup and they're like, well, we want to work on the latest and greatest technology. And it's sort of like, actually startups have enough risk involved, risk inherent in them. The last thing I want is in a new technology that's also risky. Like on some level, startups should, choose less risky things since they have enough risk elsewhere.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I don't know, Eduardo, were you trying to say something?
No. I mean, I really agree with Andrew. In the end, technology, we like it or not, is more. It's a tool for our goals. So just choosing the tool because it's cool is probably not the right way to do it. You might end up with other problems and accidental complexity and whatnot. Yep. So just that. I mean, I really fully agree with Andrew in that regard.
Very well. Actually, there's two things that I would like to give as a food for thought, because we're almost running out of time. It's like one thing that I really like is when a company internally open source its systems. So it's pretty much like saying, okay, so regardless of the disposition of the team, at the very end, everything is fully open source. If you want to contribute to a repository, just go ahead, or a project, obviously. And the other thing that we mentioned here, that's something that I tried before, and I didn't become a huge fan because of some subtleties. It's about temporary teams, because when we group like a temporary team to create a new system, as soon as a temporary team just vanishes, who owns and maintains the system? And that's something that is hard to understand, right? Because then if you want to give that to another team that created the system, it's always tricky, the handovers and so on and so forth. It's something that it's tricky, to say the least. So we are kind of almost running out of time. There is always one question that I really love to ask to everyone that is here, because usually the answers are pretty much just fantastic. And the question is, so if you had like just one engineering advice to any startup that is listening to us and would like to get to the level of Smart Asset or Circles.Life or Packlink, what advice would that be? And I think we can start by Andrew.
I think I have to sort of go maybe even a little cliche, but the culture of the people that you have together is I think more important than the level of technology or level of technology skill. While you still need to have talented people, you need to have collaborative people. You need to have people who are willing to focus on solving the problem together. And if you have that, you can solve the technology challenges no matter what.
Yeah, very well, very well. Eduardo?
Yes. So on top of that, I mean, Packlink it's been key having a really good team to make us move forward. I'd say what we were discussing before. I mean, a monolith is fine. There is just a kind of a moment on each part of the life of a startup. So at the beginning, it's going to be messy. It's going to be fast. It's going to be your legacy that will make you money. But it needs to be there. Of course, you can make it less messy without losing the market fit. Not saying you don't do that, but if you move too slow, you might not succeed. So you need to be aware of that trade-off and acquire that kind of depth. I think it's been, I don't know if it's been Martin Fowler that correlates actually to actual financial depth. You are actually gaining time by doing things later.
Absolutely. Finally, Harsh, your advice.
Yes, I would say do a lot of experiments and find a product market fit before trying to scale. So once you have right product and customers like it, then it's the right time to scale. Premature scaling will only give you, as Eduardo was saying, you may miss time to market. So.
Very, very well. Thank you so much. Ryan, can you close the panel and the session?
Yes, I can. Okay? I am here, and I went through one computer that didn't have a cord, and then another computer that didn't like the internet, and now here I am on the phone. So here's the big takeaway, guys, is that you've got to have these small little teams. Some people call them, these little sprint teams. Somebody else called them shuttle teams, but you've got multiple teams. The thing with tech and engineering is something's always going to go wrong, just like my internet connectivity today and the fact that I'm trying to get this. So I'm trying to scale up my Zoom and scale up my my Facebook Live. But if you look at it, at the end of it all, what works when scaling, what works when breaking down these big systems, it's that you have to keep trying. And as an engineer, if you are anything, you test, you optimize, you scale. And so I think sometimes if you think you're just going to scale, you forget that you've got to test first and you've got to optimize it. And that's what I'm hearing from everybody. Everybody's got a different approach. I love the fact that you've got to love the legacy, but we're all dealing with technology that's going to continue to change. I have a computer that's 2 years old, and then a computer that's 3 years old, and then a phone that's 1 year old. So we've got to work with all these different technologies together. But the biggest technology that we're dealing with are people. And at the end of the day, the only way to scale engineering is to scale with the right people. So that's what I've heard throughout. We're talking with people that have scaled themselves into a position to help others scaling. And when you're going from 50 to 100 engineers, that's crazy. That's a whole nother algorithm that you've got to figure out. So at the end of the day, what I heard is that problems will come up. It's not the problems that matter, it's how you deal with those problems. And at the end of the day, it's a people problem. So you've got to get the right people in there to solve the right problems. And that, my friends, is how you scale engineering. So keep on scaling. Treat your people just like their computers. But remember that you got to constantly be upgrading them and their software to keep on what's happening. And if the internet kicks you off, get on your phone and get again. I know that all of you have not made it to where you are without a bit of scrappiness. So here's to the scrappy engineers out there. The only way you're going to go from startup to scale up is being a bit scrappy. So embrace the legacy, build upon it, and then create systems that will continue to bring magic to your organization.
Brilliant closing, Ryan. Thank you so much.
All right, everybody. Look forward to connecting you all online, and stay dry, stay warm, stay cool, all that stuff. And stick around for next time on our podcast. We're here every week. So if you want to learn these different elements of scaling up and you want to catch past episodes, go to ScaleUpAcademy.io, and we will see you later. Bye, everybody.
I know.
Bye, all. Thank you.